All right, the coronavirus isn't the only thing spreading across the U.S. As you well know, the past week, Americans made their first tentative steps here from beneath the pandemic, and only to be confronted with civil unrest, riots showing no signs of slowing down. Health officials are now warning that these close protests could set off a second wave of COVID-19 infections. We've been very critical of other protests that happened in the past. Some folks on the show have, of protests that happened on these stay-at-home orders that were protested as well. So we continue to discuss this very thing. Dr. Mandel is joining us now from Mandel Vision. Doctor, thanks so much for coming on. I want to dive right in. How do you go back enforcing social distancing, limiting mass gatherings, all of that?
I think it's a matter of leadership. The first question is this important? Well, a week ago, we were all worried about a pandemic. We had locked down. We had almost destroyed our economy, and all worthwhile for the health of the society. And now, all of a sudden, we've seemed to have forgotten about that. This social distancing has to come from really the leadership of the protesters. It should really come from the president, public health officials, but also the leaders of the Democratic Party. President Obama should be out there talking about this, not only stopping, of course, the violence, but stopping people from being one next to one another. Because one of the things here is we really don't even understand how this virus spreads. Yes, we know it can go through the nose and the mouth primarily, secondary through the eyes as a source. But is this something that's just droplets that we only need to be 6 feet away? Or is this something that's aerosolized that could stay out there much longer? Then the protests could bring back another large wave. Our economy cannot sustain a second wave that we created ourselves if what we were doing in the first place was the right thing.
And again, putting the reasoning behind the protests aside, remember this is a health concern that we're discussing in this very segment here. So I want to be clear on that. There was a lot of criticism over the mass gathering there in the Ozarks, as we saw the shoulder-to-shoulder. This thing ran a 24-hour news cycle of how horrible these folks are doing this. The protesters you saw in Michigan on the lockdown orders, shoulder-to-shoulder people out there, mass gatherings. Again, there was all this concern. Look at what they're doing. Now that seems to have left the conversation. Is the pandemic not really, does it not matter anymore? Is it not critical? Can it not still kill people, or are we just not worried about it?
Well, the pandemic is still something that's incredibly important. I hate to say this, it is on a macro scale. This is the issue that we should be talking about. This is the issue that we should be working on. We were just going back into phases, bringing people back together. And people, and I'm critical of the media also, who basically are just running with the sensationalism of the violence that's there, that of course should be deplored. But they're not taking any responsible leadership here, and the politicians are not, about telling people that we really fought tremendously hard to devastate our economy into a recession to stop a second wave. This is about basic public health, basic common sense. And when we see this out there and people forgetting, I think this is potentially a very dangerous situation for the health of the economy and worldwide economy because if we become an incubator for other places.
And the health of each other, absolutely. Dr. Eric Mandel, a medical director at Mandel Vision. Thank you for joining us, sir. Stay safe.